And don't ever get fooled by these PMS companies, and I don't know how they get away with it, is when they market themselves as the all-in-one solution. How can you market yourself as an all-in-one solution when you have 9 million integrations? So to answer your question, no, there's not one place to go find it all.
This is episode number 84 of the Short-Term Rental Success Stories podcast. Are you an investor that's looking to have your home professionally managed? Go to cohosted.com for more information. Welcome back to Short-Term Rental Success Stories. I'm your host, Julian Sage. This is a show where I talk to hosts about their journeys in starting and growing their short-term rental business. My goal is that you'll be able to walk away with practical information that'll help you become a better host and learn how to scale your business. Like any exceptional host, we all strive for 5-star reviews, so please go on over to iTunes and let us know what you enjoy, as it really helps support the show. If you haven't done so already, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation, to connect with the community. Hey, what is going on, Host Nation? I'm super excited to be back again with you this week. I had the special honor of speaking with Terry Whyte from Anna Maria Beach Rentals, a vacation rental management company focused in the Anna Maria Island area of Florida that currently has 30 properties under management. A breakdown of those is 2 which are owned and then 28 which are co-hosted. In this episode, Terry shares his experience of 30 years of vacation rentals and how he's been able to adapt from not having used any technology to becoming the vacation rental software guy, and the common problems that he sees many vacation rental managers making. If you'd like my show notes for this episode, go to shorttermsage.com/STR84. Or if you'd like my show notes sent directly to your inbox every week, then go to shorttermsage.com/show notes. With all that being said, on to this week's conversation. Hey, welcome back, Host Nation, to another episode of Short-Term Rental Success Stories. In this episode, I have the special honor of speaking with Mr. Terry Whyte. Terry, would you please introduce yourself to the Host Nation, let them know who you are, and what inspired you to get into short-term rentals?
Hi, I'm Terry Whyte from Anna Maria Beach Rentals. Have 30 properties out on Anna Maria Island. I do some software consulting, known as a vacation rental software guy. And the reason we got into the business in the first place was because we had 3 kids and we were getting 6 weeks of rental a year. If I didn't take it over, we would have had to sell it and move on. And the first year I did it, when I took over, I did 43 weeks and it wasn't even a full year. And then next year was 52 weeks. The worst year I've ever had is 50 weeks in a year.
Wow. So, do you mind taking us back? How long ago was this first vacation rental, and what even inspired you to, getting into this business?
That was almost 30 years ago. It was before VRBO. And the inspiration was simply survival, to do it myself. At that time, I was working for General Motors. That's when computers and the internet just started to become big. And when I was working for General Motors, they said, if you take this computer course, and you complete it, we'll buy you a computer. And then, so I completed it, bought me a computer, didn't even know how to turn it on. At that time, I had surgery on my elbow. I was off work for a year. So I just started going in like I was looking for a vacation rental. And then I came across, the first site I came across was vacationrentals.com. Advertise here for free for 60 days, no questions asked. If it doesn't work, just delete it. Bookings just 43 first year. So that was the inspiration, and that was the success almost immediately.
30 years ago. So what 30 years ago from now, that was what, 1990 was that?
Right around, yeah.
1990. So fledgling internet. And you had a vacation rental. Where was it located, and where were you at?
All on Anna Maria Island. We have 30 now, but we started with one that we started that way. And then we grew from there. And then I started managing. And then my wife and we ended up buying a second property because the rental income was there. And the true story is, it was in my rental program. The owner was my best friend. He died of pancreatic cancer. Before he died, he came to me and said, the numbers are really good. I think this would be a good fit for you and Sandy. And so as soon as he died, we bought it. And then, so that's how we got the second one. And we have 30 now.
And where were you living at the time when you purchased the property?
Our primary residence is in Toronto, Canada.
Toronto, Canada.
At that time there, we would spend maybe a month a year there. Now we're both retired, so we're 6 months a year that we can spend on the island.
Got it. So living in Toronto, Canada, and you purchased your first vacation rental. How did that go about? Did you like have a manager at the time when you were purchasing it? What kind of inspired that trend?
It was my wife's property. My in-laws owned the property, and we started managing it for them. They were with a rental company. I took it over, and then when they passed away, they bequeathed it to us. So that's how we ended up as owners of that one, and then we bought the second one there. But it was with a rental agency when we took it over.
Did you, I mean, being in Toronto, Canada, did you feel like you were going to be able to manage a vacation rental? This is the early '90s. You're, across in another, all the way up in Canada. How did you handle that transition with taking over this property and even wanting to try to manage it yourself?
It was very difficult at the time just because the internet was just coming out then, but there was enough there that when I took it over, there was A1 Vacations, there were cyber rentals, there was a couple of other ones that made a lot of money on. So it was just the start of managing remote, and it made it without the internet there, it would have been pretty much impossible to do. I'd be the same thing. I'd get 6 weeks, maybe friends or family, and the snowbird from up here would rent it. And it'd be a dead end street without the internet.
And what was that like, first managing a vacation rental in the '90s? Were there like a lot of visitors going to the site and booking on these sites, or was it really, or were there other means to be able to market the property when you tried taking it over?
No, it was pretty much all OTAs, especially for sure it was VRBO at that time too. You could pay for a subscription, pay $1,500. You could be on the first page, have a couple good photos, have a couple good reviews, and then go play golf. The place was rented like all the time. It wasn't that hard. And then if you use distribution at the time, there's some real like Cyber Rentals was really good, Great Rentals was really good, A1 Vacations, really, really, really good sites until VRBO started buying them up, and stuff. It kind of tainted it a little bit. There was some really, really good sites out there.
What were some of the biggest challenges, being in Canada, having the property in Anna Maria that you were facing, at that time with trying to take it over yourself?
It wasn't that hard. It's not that hard to do remotely. It's very difficult for me being in Canada to grow as a property manager, but to actually with 30 properties and even back then with one, I have contracts with every vendor on the island, whether it's painting, appliance repair, plumbing, air conditioning. It's only a phone call away. It's really the same thing that there must be 25 rental companies on the island. It's a 7-mile island. There must be 5,000 rental properties, 25 at least rental companies. So when something goes wrong, they don't go to the property. They just pick up the phone and call a vendor. So it's not that hard. But not only being remote, it's so hard to grow. It's not only that I'm not remote, I'm in another country. And people say, how can you look after my property in Florida or North Carolina when you're in Toronto? So the challenge is growing, scaling. The challenge is not managing remotely. That's not a challenge at all.
Going back, so you got the second property. Did you feel at that time comfortable that you could take on another one, or did you feel like one was enough to try to figure out and manage it remotely, and during especially during early '90s?
No, it was really exciting at that time, the early '90s. No, it wasn't. And then the second property, the problem that I have is I always run out of inventory. So in fact, my wife and I bought a third property. We didn't even rent it. It just was a place for us to save when we went down there. And then we had it for a couple of years, and then we weren't using it as much, so we sold it. But no, my problem is running out of inventory. So buying that second property was a blessing. And two, we control it. We own it. We set the standards. It's different from managing somebody else's where they maybe don't appreciate hospitality like an owner does. So anytime you can own it instead of managing it, you're in a stronger position.
So you took on the second property. What was what was the review process like? Like, how did you know, like during this time, like if a property was doing really well, like if there was damage to the property, or how guests were even enjoying their experience? Like what was that process like during this time?
What you mean in the early days or now?
Early days, early days.
Early days, yeah. There was no reviews back then, and it was so amateurish back then. I can remember mailing people the keys in the mail to like Ohio or Utah, or and it was just an amateur show. I believe me, it's nothing compared to like it is today. It
Yeah.
was bad.
So after that second property, at this time, were you thinking like, hey, this can actually become like a really, sustainable business? Because you said that you've been with you were with General Motors for 32 years. You scaled up to around 15 properties. At which point did it kind of click for you that it's like, hey, I can really make a living out of this?
Well, the real story behind General Motors was when they imploded, and it was around somewhere in the 80s. That's when the whole yeah, that was when the whole economy fell apart. They came to people like me and they said, if you stay home, just go home, retire, we'll give you a full pension and we'll buy you a new car. And for me, I was 49 years old at the time. So, and then I could concentrate on growing the business for them. But it was never a challenge. I always knew that, I could scale up when I retired. At that point, it was pretty crazy. I was working all the time. And then when I wasn't working, I was on my BlackBerry. That's how long ago that it was, doing that. And it was, it was never a question of would it be successful or not. I always knew it would be.
What were you looking like? Did you know what the returns were going to be when you were pricing, and like how were you able to figure out your pricing during this time without like today we have the luxury of like a bunch of market research tools. We have different OTAs that we can see what other people are pricing. What was that like? Back in the 90s, figuring out how much you should be charging, when you should be raising rates, and stuff like that.
It was purely back then. It was purely from experience, knowing the island, knowing your competition, and there were no tools, like you just said. There were no. You looked at, you knew what other people were getting. You talked to people that were sitting around the pool back then. How much did you pay a week, and stuff like that. And it was just the same amateur show, back then. It was a guessing game, and it all came down from it all was experience. That's what it was.
So with two properties, when did you say like, hey, I need to start scaling this up and actually, taking on additional properties?
The second property that we own, we've only owned it for like the last 10 years or so. It was the second property that I took on, I was managing, was my wife and I were sitting at the kitchen table and I said, I need more properties because just the inquiries came in. And what really still bugs me to this day is when I have no inventory, people. So the guy lived beside us, that owned beside us. I said to him, I'll guarantee you a rental income if you leave your rental company and come with me. So he did that. And then there was another friend, the guy that died that became our friend. I said the same thing to him. I said, give me your property. I'll guarantee you an income. And then then what happened, it grew from there when owners were there and they always seen cars in the parking spot and the lights on, and they would come and say, okay, what's going on here? How come these places are off? And I said, this is just what I do. And I've never, other than those two guys, I never solicited an owner in my life. It's just word of mouth.
Wow. So when you were saying inventory, you meant like the amount of properties that were in your own portfolio. So you were getting so many inquiries during that time that it was just like you didn't have the inventory as far as like the amount of properties to be able to take those people and move them to. So you were actually reaching out to property owners and kind of doing, at that time, you were doing rental arbitrage from what it sounds like. You're leasing a property from them, guaranteeing them a rent, and then basically just, turning it into a vacation rental.
Yeah, and that's when we only had one property at that time. And then after I made those two guarantees, it really grew quickly after that. But where it really grew was like in one complex, there's 32 units. I ended up with 9 of them, out of the 32. And then another one, I think there's 14 in the complex. I have 7 of them now. It's all just word of mouth, and it's all people observing other people's parking spots with the lights on.
So, how do they even know that you were the guy that was managing these properties? And at the time were people like upset that it's like, hey, all of these properties are being turned into vacation rentals, or was the mindset always at that time like, hey, this is a vacation rental destination?
Yeah, for vacation rental destination, pretty much the one complex I just told you, there's 32 units in it. Nobody lived there. Anna Maria Island at that time still is. It's a tourist island. People rented, so there was never any resentment. The only resentment was people saw their places sitting there empty, and others were full all the time. So and then It was simply, and I have to give credit to my owners too. They never were reluctant to give out my contact information, thinking that every new property I got would hurt them. So they were really good to me too. So strictly, it was pretty easy to grow just from word of mouth.
Yeah, I think that's maybe one of the concerns that maybe people have. It's like, hey, well, if you're taking on more properties, it's like, well, my place is probably not going to get booked up as much. Do you ever get that?
I get it. I get it all the time. And again, my biggest problem is no inventory. But I have the way that I share my owners is I have worldwide distribution. I have the most advanced technology. So no, is it going to hurt them? No, it's not. And I
So,
tell them too that their competition is not me, just me. The competition is in Sarasota. It's in Miami. It's in the Panhandle. It's not what I have in my rental program. You know, so that's what I tell them all the time. Don't worry about me. Worry about the rest of Florida.
what were you doing, or what did you start to do to like, were you working primarily with people that had properties, and then they would just say like, hey, these properties are booked up, they would somehow get referred, and they would get your contact, and they would just ultimately become another client? And how would you onboard people where you're living in another country and their properties down there? Like, how could you do that verification process and find out like if this was going to be a good property to take onto your portfolio?
Back then, you pretty much took on anything that was available. And it was so long ago. But back then, it was really only VRBO and some of those other satellites. So it was easy to onboard, like you do one at a time. It would take a couple hours to upload the photo. Getting the photos was the big part. Once you get the photos, there's nothing to it. And just like now, it's so easy now with a PMS to upload, property. I just uploaded one this morning. It took me an hour, after I have the photos. And even back then, it was no big deal. And there really wasn't any verification, where these OTAs wanted to see a utility bill, or anything like. It was nothing like that. It was just, oh, you have a property, list it.
So you had 9 properties or so that you started to scale up in this one complex. At which point did you say like, hey, I can leave my job, or was that a natural transition from leaving it, or was it like you were forced into this position and relying on your vacation rentals at that point?
No, no, I wasn't forced into it, and I have a good pension now with General Motors and everything. I do this because it's profitable, And if it wasn't profitable, I would just walk away from it. Like, I spend way too much time in front of my computer. So no, and it's nothing like that. It has everything to do with I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm good at what I'm doing. It's making a lot of money. Our can afford to fly our kids and our grandkids down to Florida to see us when we stay there for the winter. So we can travel. We travel all over the world, conferences, stuff like that. So it's a fun thing to do. You know.
What are some of the complications that maybe, or some of the unique things that you see in a very well established vacation rental market? Like, when people are purchasing property or looking for certain types of returns in, let's say, Anna Maria, what should someone expect in that area? Like, is there like a standard, like, hey, all of the managers kind of here charge like the same amount, or these are the types of returns that you can see from a vacation rental, or is it all across the board?
No, it's different. My competition is one of my biggest assets because they're so bad at what they do. There's a couple on the island that are my competition. They're really good at what they do, but the majority, it's just like if you work for somebody, or you were at work, you said, I hope that guy never gets fired because he makes everyone here look good, kind of thing. And so as far as returns, what people don't understand is they think, I have this place in Florida. I just bought this place. People are going to come. They don't understand hospitality. They don't understand that the most important part of what they do and what I do is it's the product. It always starts with the product. It doesn't matter how much technology you have or anything else that you do. People, when they go on vacation now, they want to stay in a place that is nicer than what they live in. And if they don't get it, they're only too happy to tell the rest of the world on TripAdvisor, on social media. The problem is people don't understand how important the product is. It's not technology, it's the product.
What are some of the things? I mean, that's a pretty unique way to look at maybe some of the larger operators Why? What is it that they're doing that you see that is actually to your benefit to be able to have an enhanced product?
Yeah, for sure. It would start with their product. Again, their products are not very, very good, and they're the kind of places that people don't want to stay in, and they're places that you hear all over the internet that this is almost a scam. The the inside, the furniture, everything's run down. It sleeps six. There's four plates in there, six pieces of cutlery. It's just you can mention anything. Everything they do is bad. Their communication is bad. Their response to problems, everything that is critical to success, they do wrong.
So Terry, why are these companies so large, or why are they able to take up so many units?
They're local. People are desperate. They don't want to do it themselves. They jump from one rental agency to another. There's no loyalty. They have the same bad experience no matter where they go. So it's a demand. It's people don't want to do this themselves. They need a rental agency. They think they need a rental agency.
So are you saying that it's the client as opposed to the agency itself? Like the clients aren't the ones that are, enhancing their properties, and then the agency basically has to, try to work with a client that maybe has super high expectations but won't, do any of the work themselves?
I think it's a combination of both. Yeah, they instead of going to the owner and say you need to do this, this, and this, and if they don't do it, say we're going to drop your property. If they don't do it, they just live with it. So it's both of them for sure. And that's where I'm really fortunate. Is I have a lot of really nice properties, and I really don't have to go to my owners and say, listen, you need to do this, this, and this. They they make a lot of money, and the guest experience to them is important too. Like they don't want somebody to come. It's not just a transaction. It's not just me sending them a check at the end of the month. They don't want the guests to show up and have a bad experience. And a lot of them too, they don't even care about a bad review. It's just the experience. They care. That's where I'm fortunate.
When did you start to see the most amount of your growth? Did it come from you doing like a particular marketing, or was it all just years and years of really good management and building on those referrals? Like what was kind of your way of growing your portfolio?
The occupancy again, like we talked about there, with the owners see the lights on in the parking spots and stuff like that. The money that I made, and it was definitely slow growth. Word of mouth is slow growth for sure. And the my best friend there that we bought the condo from, that he lived in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio. Then he moved to Florida, and he really promoted me. Like he was just a real social guy. People loved him. He was always out on the island. He was in committees. He was in bars and restaurants, and they'd say, "Oh, we need a rental. We're not getting any rentals." And they say, "Well," he'd say, "You got to call this guy." So he got me at least half of my properties, just him alone.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really great. So your friend was referring basically clients, or referring like investors that were looking to purchase properties down there?
I've never had an investor in my life. They're all clients. They were all owners. I have never had an investor. Yeah.
What is the type of mindset, or how do you handle people that are longtime vacation rental owners? Maybe they have a certain idea of how a property should be managed or how it should be done. How do you kind of do that, as opposed to maybe an investor client that is more numbers driven, returns, more on the side of the returns, as opposed to this is their vacation rental property?
Yeah. Again, I've never worked with an investor, and I've never had one approach me. The way I would handle that is easy. I would just show them my numbers, my revenue. Like nobody can touch my occupancy and my revenue, and I have the data to prove it through key data dashboard. And as far as owners going, I make them so much money, they never question me. They just no owner ever questions me and gives me a hard time.
But how do you communicate with them or onboard those owner clients? Is there like a particular way that you have to handle someone that is more of a seasoned vacation rental owner?
No, what I do again, it's because they're already with another company. What the thing that I do best, that converts the most, is when I can sit down with them when I'm on the island, and I take my laptop with me, and I can show them the software that I use, the technology that I have, the distribution that I have, how I communicate with the guests, how I could communicate with the owners, all through my technology, and then showing them the numbers, and let's say in that one complex where there's 12 in there, I have 7. I said, okay, here's your competition. Here's what you're telling me you're making. Here's this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. Look at their numbers. And they just look at me like a cow at a passing train. They just, it works every time. Now you have to do it through Zoom meetings. Before I'd be on the island, you could sit down with them, which was a lot better approach, but of course, can't do it now.
What are some of the most common objections that you hear from people on the island, from the property owners, that when you're trying to onboard them as a client? Like, what are some of the most common objections that you hear?
First of all, the very first one is lack of revenue. Lack of revenue, lack of occupancy. Basically, they're getting no rentals. That's really the only reason that people really come to me. I've never had somebody come to me and say, "Oh, we didn't like this company because there was so much damage done to the property all the time, and we always had this problem." It's never been like that. It's always been, we're not getting any rentals.
Why is that the case? I mean, you're very heavy on the technology side. So, what is it that other managers aren't doing? Are they just not marketing it on like different OTAs, or having, creating direct booking sites and trying to drive traffic? Or like, what's the big difference there?
I would say definitely it is, they don't know how to market, and even as simple as advertising on an OTA is, they're not even good at that. And then they don't even, they might advertise like on 1 or 2 OTAs. And what people don't understand is distribution, even if it's worldwide, like I have, it's not OTA distribution. It's OTA. It's email marketing. It's Google AdWords. It's Facebook advertising. It's Instagram advertising. It's not advertising on VRBO and then charging the owner. Like they charge $500 for a subscription. Every rental agency on the island charges the owner to rent. For me, I just absorb the cost. The photography, everything. I just absorb all the costs, and I don't pass anything on to my owners. I just do it.
So are you looking for a particular number or a particular type of return from a property? Like you said that there's a lot of owners that maybe don't take care of the property the same way. And they basically hop from one agency to another. What are the types of returns that you're looking for? And what type of owner clients are you also looking for?
Owner clients, first of all, to understand hospitality. That's exactly, it's not a transaction and, those damn renters, that kind of thing. No, it's understanding technology. And I want at least a 10% return on my investment. And that's why I absorb all the costs for VRBO, for the photography, for all that stuff, because I know I'm going to make it back. For a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo, an average 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo on Anna Maria Island that's not on the beach, an average company would do 20 to 25,000. I do at least 50. So that's mine. And I'm working with a company now called Vintori to grow my inventory. I just started there. I've never solicited anybody. I just started because of COVID. It was preemptive because I thought I was going to lose some owners. I've got one owner has 4 mortgages. I have another owner that lives in the UK. She works for British Airways. She lost her job in March. So it was just kind of a preemptive move. But where I'm going with this is the way that they market me to other owners is they pull the data from my PMS. They pull the data from keyboard key data dashboard, and that they use the charts and the graphs to market my numbers. So that's what I do different from everyone else.
And so this is a way to try to grow your clientele. And what they take like a referral fee, or do you pay a subscription? Like, how does that work?
There's a referral fee for the first year that you pay a percentage of that. And that's my goal would be, my goal is to never hire anyone. I think I could manage 50 properties myself. If I got to 40, I'd be happy. And again, it was a preemptive move. If I thought I'd never lose an owner because of this, I probably wouldn't do it. But yeah.
Okay. That's I've never heard of that service, but it's a little too early to tell, or have you started to get some clients that
Yeah,
are.
I've been with them for 3 months. I've had a couple of leads, and nothing has happened. But it's a proven ROI, and I know it's going to work.
So Terry, what was it like at that point when you left General Motors? You said you had around 15 properties, and you went full time with vacation rentals. What was that transition like? Did you feel prepared, or did you feel like it was something that was a little bit uncharted for you?
No, it was something that it was the most blissful thing. From the first day I worked at General Motors, the only thing I ever wanted to do was retire. So I couldn't have been happier, when I retired. And then my other passion was vacation rentals. So I got to concentrate all day long on vacation rentals. So there was no transition at all. I couldn't have been happier.
And going back to one of the to those questions. So you said most people are coming to you just because of their place isn't occupied. But are you hearing any objections as to why someone might work with you when when they're reaching out?
Yes. Yeah, there's a couple of points. One, there's two in particular. One would be I'm remote. So they have a hard time wrapping their head around me being in Toronto and managing their property. And the other one is I demand I won't onboard a property unless I have exclusive rights to it from Christmas until the middle of August. Like the owner can't use it, they can't rent it, and it's mine. And again, that's prime time for me. I'm doing this for profit. If I lose some properties because of, but and I'm okay with that too.
And how do you handle those objections, such as you being remote, or if you have a certain way of managing properties that maybe they object to? How do you handle those objections?
Being remote, the only thing is again, I can ensure them. I do everything what the agencies do on the island. If something goes wrong, if there's an electrical problem or something, do you think they drive out to the property? No, they pick up the phone just like I would do. And other than that, I don't have any owners that object to anything that I do. They never question me.
Have you ever had to turn any owners away?
I Last month I fired one owner. I let him go. And all the time I've been doing this, I've only lost one owner, and that was my own fault. It was a mistake that I made, and I onboarded the property, and I didn't pay close enough attention to what it was doing, and then they left shortly after. But other than that, my churn rate is no one has a lower churn rate than what I have.
When did you start to see that? You call yourself the vacation rental software guy, so obviously this is something that you definitely pronounce a lot more. When did you start to see like, hey, I should really be implementing some more tools into your business?
This is a good one. This is an easy one to answer. I'm not sure if you remember when VRBO introduced Best Match. Do you remember that? Okay, that's when they introduced best match because of guys like me. I was using one property to feed 14 others. My calendars were never up to date and stuff like that. But then when they introduced best match, that whole thing just fell apart. So I knew at that time my only salvation was to invest heavily in technology that I had to change or I was going to get left behind. So right then and there, I made a commitment. I knew I needed a PMS. I needed, a CRM. I needed all these technology tools. I went out and got it. And I just changed my business model, and just pivoted on the fly.
Around what year was this when you realized that you need to start taking on different tools?
I forget the year of Best Match, but it's probably been, I would say, 5 or 6 years ago. That was when that it really became apparent that the whole industry was changing. You couldn't, those bad habits, the bad experience for the person like you that wanted to book a vacation, you went on a VRBO, you called the owner or you made the booking and they had to cancel it because it was just a bad experience because calendar wasn't up to date, and all that stuff.
So for around 25 years, it was more like a traditional vacation rental agency, and have a lot of the agencies on the island transitioned over to more software technology focused, or still majority of the managers still operating from a more older vacation rental standpoint?
No, they are they're using technology. They all use a PMS, in a pretty good one. As far as how much technology are they using, I'm not sure of that, but I know for sure they use, they have 200-300 properties. They need technology. They do use it. Not effectively, but they have it.
Hey, this is Julian, and I wanted to be able to give you our newest book, Airbnb Secrets Revealed, How to Build a Fortune on Airbnb Without Owning Property. In this book, we talk about the concepts of rental arbitrage investing, as well as co-hosting, and how you can build a business leveraging other people's properties. This book is perfect for the new short-term rental investor, and it's something that I wish that I had when I first started, as it would have saved me a lot of trouble and helped me to understand how to be able to leverage the power of short-term rental investing in your own real estate portfolio. If you'd like to get our newest book completely for free, go to shorttermsage.com/free book. Now, back to the show. And what would you say is the breakup? Would you say that on the island that most of the larger players are taking up the majority, or is it smaller operators that are taking up a lot of the units? How does the breakup work?
Yeah, I would say most of it is bigger property managers with 200 or 300 properties. It's becoming so in vogue now to open up because vacation rentals have just exploded, for companies to open up a company, a vacation rental company. So now they're trying to scale too. So there's a lot of them too that have like 20 to 30 properties and they're trying to grow. So there's a good mix of both.
And what are you seeing that the different companies, how they are growing? Because you've grown from a lot of word of mouth and organic. How do you see other companies scaling their portfolios?
They're really doing a good job. The smaller startup companies with a property count of 30 to 40, even 20 in there, they're really doing a good job of marketing. They're doing a good job of social media. Their presence there. Again, for them, I don't think that they would find the bigger companies, with the exception of a couple, are that much of a challenge to them. Like they're stealing their inventory just because of the social presence that they have, what they're doing. They're getting a lot of good products. Like people are buying new vacation homes too, and they're going with them instead of a big vacation rental company. So there's a good mix.
And what about, why would somebody go with a smaller, maybe more of a startup, more entrepreneurial startup vacation rental company versus, yourself, which is, years and years of vacation rental management and experience on the island, versus these larger companies that have, are probably, looking at everybody as maybe more of like a number?
I think the biggest influencer is social media. These companies that are doing such a really good job of promoting their own product, for promoting not only their brand, but the properties that they have on there, and just the presence that they have on social media, I think is a huge, huge advantage. That's where they're really killing it, I think.
Is that something that you feel that you need to start, coming up with the times and doing yourself? Or do you feel that, because you're so well established that it's not really something that you need or that you even want to take on in your life?
No, that for sure. I have to change too. I get left behind. I told you I started working with Vintory there to grow the inventory preemptive move. I also started working in the last month with a digital marketing firm called 91 Digital. They're doing all my content writing. They're doing my Google AdWords. They're doing my Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising. So, I'm changing too, for the better.
So you didn't actively go out there and learn like how to do Google ads, Facebook ads, all this stuff. This was something that you just knew that you needed to start to implement. So you hired somebody else that could do that for you.
I did. I experimented with it, but I've never had to really depend on it before. But I was really vulnerable about a year ago. So, and in the sense that I was all my activity, I'll give you a good example. I as much as direct booking, anywhere from 30% to 70%. It depends on the month. It goes up and down on a scale. But the problem with my direct booking was it's almost all repeat guests. There was no organic, so I think to me, that was just the biggest red flag. So I knew my PMS wasn't really good enough. I knew my booking engine for sure wasn't good enough. I knew my website, which wasn't WordPress, wasn't good enough. So I needed a WordPress website with an outstanding booking engine, and I needed a new PMS. I needed a new CRM, and it was a year-long plan, and I completed it in June. And now I've got everything in motion there. That I made the changes for a reason, and everything is in motion here. So I'm in a good spot.
And that's really that's a lot of work and a lot to undertake. So just compliments to you for undergoing that. WordPress can be intimidating to a lot of people. You talk about CRM, customer relationship management tools. After you got all of your tools set up, and you're transitioning from being more reliant on what the platforms and the OTAs are kind of giving you. You're trying to take more of that independence back because you saw like, hey, just because you've been on the island for 30 years doesn't mean that you're not going to be maybe taken out from one of these other companies that might be able to offer some maybe a higher quality product, or they might be more aggressive in their marketing. You have those repeat guests, those referrals, those good longstanding clients, but things could change. So what, after you had everything set up, did you say like, hey, I need to start running ads, or I need to start doing this and that? Like, what were some of your next steps once you got that set up?
Yeah, that was the impetus for the change, knowing that I was way too dependent on OTAs and repeat guests. That we talked about it earlier there, that distribution is not just OTAs. It's every part of distribution that you can think of: email marketing, AdWords, Google, or Facebook, Instagram. So it was a year-long plan, and I couldn't execute it back then because I didn't have the tools in place. If I would have spent like I'm spending $600 a month on just AdWords alone, with my booking engine, it would have been a waste of time. People would have went on there, tried to book, couldn't book, or it was too slow, and they exit out. And I'm just throwing money away, and not converting. So,
how do you even go about finding like the right setup? Like, when you get into WordPress, like how did you know, like, which place that you should start hosting on your website, or how to be able to integrate your PMS into WordPress? Like there's a lot of other things that come on when you start taking on, more open source, tools. Like how did you undergo that process?
Well, anytime, well, for me, I've broken down almost every PMS that you can, broken down, put it back together, CRMs. For me, that was pretty easy. I knew what I wanted. I knew where to find it because I demo softwares. Like I've done hundreds of them. I spent thousands of hours. So I knew what I needed. I knew where to find it. Anytime that you have your PMS and your website hosted on the same platform, it's a marriage made in heaven. So for me, there wasn't a lot to do. It was picking the PMS, working with the web development team at the same company, telling them what I wanted, and they executed it. There wasn't a lot for me to do. It was just having a plan, and executing.
So after you got all of that set up, did you know like what you should expect from returns? You said you're spending around $600 a month on Google AdWords. Have you been able to start tracking and seeing like, what is your cost per lead or cost per acquisition?
No, started about a week ago. So we're just into it now, where we have to give it a week or so and sit down and look at the analytics, see what we're doing. The company I work with, they're almost guaranteeing me like you're going to get 10 times your return on investment. That's what they're doing with their other clients. They pull up their numbers, they show it. So I'm pretty confident that it's going to work out. I'm not worried about it.
And this agency that you're working with, they deal specifically with vacation rental owners?
Yes, they do. Yes.
Okay. What would you do differently if you had to start from scratch?
Well, I can't really think of anything that I would do differently, simply because back then there was nothing out there to do. The only person that I had to follow back then was the Mother Teresa of vacation rentals, Heather Bear. She was the only person out there. And we started about the same time. But, I still follow her to this day. But back then you learned from your mistakes, and you name it. I made every one of them, you learn from it. But now there's no reason to make those mistakes. It's almost overwhelming, the amount of help that is out there now. And when I look at these people and I see the mistakes that they're making, it just drives me crazy. Like I just don't understand what they're doing.
Can you start naming off what some of those common mistakes are?
Well, yeah, start with they don't have a website. They advertise on one OTA. It's usually Airbnb. They love Airbnb, so they have zero distribution. You know, they don't follow the industry leaders like Matt Landau, Steve Milo, Heather Bear, Amy Hinote, Richard Boughton. Mark Simpson over there in Europe. He's just doing such a fantastic job. They don't follow any of those people. They don't educate themselves, and there's just so much help out there. I'm envious because I wish I had that when I started, because I wouldn't have made all those mistakes.
And if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's trying to start their own short-term rental business, what would that be?
It starts with the product. You have to have an outstanding product. You have to use technology. You have to be personal. And when people go on vacation, they go on vacation for two reasons. It's memories and relationships. And be part of that relationship. Use technology or you're going to get left behind. And right now it is so important to be personal. Everyone talks about technology. I say probably one of the best pieces of technology that I use is technology that was invented in 1876, and it's called the telephone. I spend half my day on the telephone, being personal with people, how to make them feel important. It's all right now. If you want direct bookings, if you want good reviews, you want people coming back to you, be personal. It'll happen, guaranteed.
One of the things that I think is, pretty unique, is you're a one-man self-managed team. You've scaled up to 30 properties. Not too many hosts that I talk to on the show that are able to manage, 30 properties on their own. Usually there's a tipping point at around, I'd probably say around 7 to 14, where it's like, okay, I really need to start hiring people, or I need to start doing other things. What are you doing that's so different that allows you to be able to, manage 30 properties and growing, and you set up to 50, you could probably do on your own, as well as being, in another country?
To me, I don't find it difficult. Like I don't know how people with 7 properties could hire someone and be profitable. Like to me, it's not hard to do 30 properties. With the technology I have and the streamlined operations that I have, it's not. I don't find it that I would never hire somebody until I got above 50 properties. There's no way I could easily do that.
I mean, what were some of the roadblocks that you saw, and the tools that you started to implement that allowed you to be able to, manage a lot more efficiently?
Oh, definitely. There's no question about it. It's the PMS. The PMS is the hub of all your technology. Everything starts with PMS and goes out from there. It's the PMS is your best friend. I don't understand. You cannot be successful running a vacation rental business without a PMS.
Okay. And can you name off some of the different tools that you utilize? Like what would you say is like your vacation rental stack?
Okay, my stack is my PMS, which you can text message from now. And the worldwide mode of communication for the last 15 years at least has been text messaging. Regardless of age or gender, is text. It's almost impossible to find a PMS that you can text message somebody. So it'd be a strong PMS with a unified inbox, like that. It would be revenue management for sure. It would be the CRM for sure. Smart locks for sure. I think that pretty much covers it right there.
Okay. And with your CRM, are you getting are you finding I think a lot of the ones that are open, a lot of people recommend MailChimp. I don't personally use MailChimp just because I think it's a little bit basic, but I think it's a good start. Have you found like an advanced tool or something that you're using that makes things a little bit more better for storing that customer information?
Yeah, I used to use Constant Contact. I think it's just a preference. There's a lot of good ones out there, but the problem with those is it's a double entry. So everything comes into your PMS. You got to go put it in your CRM. Now mine is streamlined. I have what I consider the best CRM in the industry. built into my PMS. It's right there. So that everything that goes in there goes into my CRM. It goes into my PMS. There's some good PMSs out there, but again, it's streamlining. It's streamlining your operations, and there's no other PMS out there that has a really good built-in CRM. And to me, that's going to be the most important component of technology going forward. I don't think it's a PMS. I think it's going to be the CRM.
If you wouldn't mind kind of expounding on that, because a lot of people in the vacation rental space, they talk PMS, which, PMS is definitely, an important backbone, but the CRM, do you mind expounding on why the importance of a CRM and why you see that being such an important tool for the future?
Well, we always talk about the guest experience, but when people refer to CRM as the acronym, they're referring as, customer, management. What I call it is customer retention management. Not relations management, retention. So, and I think the communication as we go forward is, if you're ever going to book direct, you're going to have to have a strong CRM, because without it, I don't think you can survive. And then how you communicate with your guests when they're on site, let's say for the 2 months they book forward from you, you communicate with them till they get to the property, you communicate with them when they're on the property, you communicate with them when they leave the property. There's a 2-day follow-up, there's a 2-month follow-up, there's a 6-month follow-up. It's just, to me, you're not going to be able to do it without a CRM.
Awesome. And what's the best way? I mean, there's a lot of different tools out there, Terry, lots of different PMSs, CRMs, pricing tools, smart locks, all these different things. Where do you recommend people go to be able to research and find, is there like a one solution and this is what everybody should be doing? Or is it pretty, unique to the individual's needs?
It's unique. I really think the link that I sent you to how to choose a property management software tool that Matt Landau and I built. That's a good place to start. But there's so many moving parts now, and I think these PMSs, they're going to really regret what they're doing with this plug and play thing here, where they're not innovating themselves. Everyone else is innovating around them, and then they're integrating with them. And I really think, you're always going to have some plug and play. Should they be doing revenue management? No. Should they be doing smart home automation? No. But how about the guest portal? We talk about the guest experience until you want to beg for mercy. That's all you ever hear anymore, And then they're ceding that to these companies. The cleaning module, the housekeeping module, they're ceding everything away. So to answer your question, no, there is. And don't ever get fooled by these PMS companies, and I don't know how they get away with it, is when they market themselves as the all-in-one solution. How can you market yourself as an all-in-one solution when you have 9 million integrations? So to answer your question, no, there's not one place to go find it all.
Right. I think, I don't want to talk bad about any particular tool, but what are some of the, what you're saying is, be cognizant of, a tool that says that they are an all-in-one. I think, one of the most popular ones is probably like Guesty. Guesty, has a bunch of different things that they offer. It's kind of like, it's that all-in-one. They charge, a pretty good amount for that. But you're saying that even them, they're not really all-in-one. They're using a bunch of different tools to integrate with.
Unequivocally, yes. And even you can really get in trouble here too, is thinking this way, is even though they have like a cleaning module or a guest portal and stuff like that, most of them are unusable. So just even though they say they have them, most of them are unusable. So you got to go use something else anyway.
I mean, you've spent a lot of time, researching a lot of different PMSs and a lot of tools. What are some of the most important things that you should see in a PMS that people should be thinking about? Because you're saying, lots of people, they think, oh, it's all in one, it's going to be able to do everything for me. But you're saying, hey, you really shouldn't be thinking that way. So when people are looking at these different tools, what really should they be looking for?
First of all, try and streamline whatever you can, whatever possible, get it all in one platform, if you can do that. But, there's about 30 components to a good PMS, but just people find it really intimidating and just difficult to understand because they are so powerful. But if you could just identify like what 6 or 7 really core components of a CRM, of what a PMS is, rates, how to create rates, distribute rates. Do you have access to like beyond pricing, price labs, tools like that, and housekeeping? Of course, your housekeeping can kill you. So you have to make sure that you got some kind of communication with your cleaners and how they can communicate with you back and forth when they're on the property. But rates management, oh, for sure, it's distribution. When I look at a PMS, the first thing I look at is distribution, and I can actually predict when I start a demo. The very first question I ask is, how many channels do you connect directly with? I don't want to hear anything about channel manager. How many do you connect directly with? If it's 4 of the big 5, the big 5 would be Booking.com, Expedia, Airbnb, Verbal, TripAdvisor. If you have direct connection with 4 of them, you will score at least 100 in our algorithm that we built. Less than 4, you will come out at your score rate between 60 and 75. And I can predict that within 96% accuracy before I even start the demo, what's going to happen there. So always look at distribution. Channel manager, your PMS should always be your strongest channel manager. And if it's not, you got a problem.
And for those that maybe don't know, can you explain the difference between, a direct connection to one of the OTAs versus a channel manager?
Yeah, and you're just bringing in a third party. Like your own PMS should be able to connect directly to Verbal, Airbnb for sure, Booking.com, without the reliance on having to go and get a channel manager to do that. There's just and there's a couple reasons for that. Is first of all, when you bring in a third party technology, something always goes wrong with technology. So when you bring in a third party, you're just asking for more trouble. You know what's going to happen. And then the second thing is, to use a good PMS is expensive, and our margins are always getting squeezed. And so why would you pay a channel manager 5% of what you're doing when you have a direct connection with your PMS? So it makes no sense to me. And don't believe this thing. Oh, that's all we do, so we do it better than a PMS. They do not.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different tools out there. So I think it's pretty cool that you created this tool. We're going to include a link in the show notes with that if you want to be able to find out about your PMS, which is the best for you. But what would you say, Terry, for people that are testing a bunch of different tools? PMSs, especially once you start to scale, that is a very it's a very intimidating, transition, but 2, it can be costly. You're learning a whole new system, the integration points, lots of different things. How many tools should people be testing, and how do you even know like if this is the right one for you?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, because people come to me for help with less than 5 properties to more than 1,000. And with them, they both have the same thing. They know what they need. They know that they want to make a change, but they don't know what the change they should be making, and they don't want to make that mistake. And so, other than hiring somebody to hold your hand to walk through it and stuff like that, you just have to do like what I do and just go into the demo and just break it down and maybe take 2 or 3 demos of the same thing. It's the same problem for big and small. It's choosing the right one, and there's no easier answer to it. I wish I could give you one, but there isn't.
I mean, there's a lot of really popular PMSs out there. Just to name off the top of my head, there's Logify, Hostfully, OwnerRez. Those are Guesty. Just to name a few. I think Hofy is one of them. Zivu. There's lots of new tools coming out. Are there, and I'm sure that you've looked into all of them. Are there tools out there that are publicly, gaining popularity or really popular, that it's just like, hey, you really should think twice about these tools? I don't know, we don't want to discredit any of them, but, from the tools that you've seen that maybe are gaining popularity, are there things that people should be aware of with them?
Well, I'll name some really good PMSs. would be Track. You start with, you have Streamline, you have Avantio, you have Maxton, Direct. They're all really, really good products. But again, the ones that you named are all pretty much for smaller people like that. The ones that I just named are for bigger. So there's you name some really good ones. I named some really good ones.
So the tool, because the tools that you were bringing up, I mean, these aren't tools that I'm familiar with. I don't think that they are as big in the marketing in the vacation rental side. Is like, what are these more traditional property management tools, or
they're just really, really good, high end, among the best PMSs that you're going to find out there. But the ones that you mentioned too, like they're good PMSs too. I'm not discrediting any of them. There's some are better than others, but you pay for what you get. And your needs are different. If you have 75 properties, what the PMS you're going to choose is probably not going to be the same as somebody with 10.
So the tools that you're bringing up, are those, because again, this is the first time that I've heard a lot of these tools. Are they particularly different than what is more publicly marketed in the vacation rental space?
They're more comprehensive, much more powerful. Yes, they are industry leading tools for sure.
In the vacation rental sector.
In the vacation rental sector, yeah.
Okay, and are they doing things that are different than what these tools that we see in the space do, or are they like, what are some of the differences between what's more marketed out there versus some of the tools that you mentioned?
Well, they have really strong distribution. They have really the biggest difference for sure is trust accounting. Like you're going to have to find it's so important to property managers in North America to have trust accounting. And you're not going to see, tools like that in a smaller ones that you just mentioned. Not that they don't have really good accounting modules and your accountant would love you at the end of the year. They would, but they're not New York certified, North Carolina certified trust accounting. They do so many things really good. And some of the ones that you just mentioned, they do some things better than the big ones, but the big ones do more consistently than the small ones better. And that's the way I would summarize it.
So the tools that you mentioned are what maybe some of the larger at scale property management companies are using, while the tools that we bring up, like Your Porter, stuff like that, are more of the startup working in the more boutique property management side.
And they would appeal to people with smaller property counts for sure. The ones that you mentioned, people with 50 properties or more, they're not going to be looking in that direction. The ones that I mentioned, people with that's the direction that they would be looking in.
Interesting. So all of those tools are also included in that tool that you mentioned, the thing that you created.
Yeah, one caveat there is the second version of our tool is coming out shortly, and it's going to include some really good softwares that weren't included in the first one, that just because we either didn't know about them or they came to us afterwards and said, could we be included in the next version? I'll give you an example, is Avantio, Maxton, iPro, all very, very good ones that I'm really happy and proud to be onboarding here in our next one. And Avantio, that I want to say one thing about that is all those PMSs that you mentioned, and they were kind of on the smaller scale. Avantio is one that people should, with smaller property counts, should really look at serious, because some of the big PMSs, they want a 50 property count. They don't want to talk to you unless you have 50 properties. Don't call us. Avantio is such a strong, and what's so unique about it is they'll take you on with as little as 3 properties, but their PMS is as good as some of these other ones that have these 50 property counts. So I encourage people to take a look at that.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think that's pretty interesting, because a lot of the tools that are more publicly marketed in the space, that's kind of what everybody kind of knows. So it's pretty cool to hear from the vacation rental software guy some of the different things that maybe we don't know. More knowledge, more power to you. So I appreciate that. And what question would you ask maybe someone that's at a similar size than you, or maybe at that next level where you're trying to grow? If you could ask them anything, what types of questions would those be?
It would be how to scale. being remote, how to scale. Other than that, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm nothing. What they really do, and they really have done a better job than I have, is branding their company for sure. That would be a glaring weakness for me for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Terry. And what's the best way if anybody wants to be able to reach out to you if they have any more questions, they want to connect? How can they reach you?
The vacationrentalsoftwareguy.com.
Vacationrentalsoftwareguy.com. Of course, we'll include all the links in the show notes. Until next time, Host Nation, keep on hosting. Hope you hosts benefited from the show. If you found value, please go on over to iTunes, leave us a review, and let us know what you enjoy about the show. If you'd like to talk to hosts that have been featured in these episodes as well as the community, go on over to our Facebook group, The Host Nation.